Hello and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, we'll be making a complete login page using the grid layout that is provided by the Kiwi. So basically, grid layout is one of the widgets that is provided by the Kiwi. So basically, grid layout is something that is containing the row and column. So we'll have this row here, and basically in the row we can have a multiple widget over here. So let me just make it down here. So this will be the text field for the password or for the view that is basically for the name. So I'll just put here that is a name first, and you can just enter a name here, and we'll just pass here password, and you can also put a password here over here. So this will be our app, and we are going to implement using the Python code. So let's get into it. So first of all, let's create a new Python file, and I'll just say that is login page and .py, and you are good to go. So first of all, what you have to do is obviously we have to import the Kiwi module. So I'll just say kiwi.app, and it is really basic because we have to just import this app class or app module every time we just make a new application. And next would be to just import the UIX, that is this kiwi.uix interface. And next is we have here a couple of options. So we want to just make this login page using the grid layout. So I'll just say grid layout here. So in order to just make use of this grid layout, I will just import this grid layout module. So if you want to just check out this grid layout, just go to this declaration part, and you could see here a grid layout. So you can get the documentation part for the grid layout. Basically it will have the spacing, and it has a length equal to here, which you can also customize. And basically you have all the function that is needed in order to just make a grid. So basically it will have padding here, it will have row, it will have columns, and it will just bind to our console. So next thing is just close this again, and next thing is to import our label, and that is for this text basically. So I'll just say uix dot and first will be label here, and I'll just import label over here. And next is text input, which is basically for this field over here. So I'll just say kiwi and .uix and it should be text input, and import me a text input. And this is basically our module. That means you can see our naming convention here. T is capital and I is capital, which is basically our camel case. So if you see here in this case, that is from importing from this module, from this interface, what we did is basically using this UIX, which is basically for the GUI section of our Kiwi. We just imported the text input and label in order to deal with this text field. So next thing is to just create a login, that is login page, and we have to just make use of this grid layout. So I'll just make use of this grid layout because we have now inheritance here. That means we can use all of this method or all of the attribute of the grid layout over here in this login page. As we have already studied in the object oriented programming, the first function of any class would be the init method, that is our constructor. So let's define that. So after that self agent default argument, we'll just pass a packed dictionary over here named as quarks. So this is basically our dictionary, and in this dictionary we have just packed the values and keys. And next thing is just call the super, and in this super we'll just make use of this login page that we have here, and just pass a self and call our init method of our super class, that is of this grid layout. So what I have done here is we'll just pass a dictionary over here again. That should be quarks over here. So what we have done here is basically we have called this grid layout init method. So if you just go in this declaration part of the grid layout, so you could see and you can go down here and you could see the init method over here, which will take basically this dictionary, and basically it will just make a row and column and bind to the console according to our need, that is giving the spacing, padding, and this is basically what we need for the login page. So we'll just make use of that from this super method that is calling the parent class. In this parent class is grid layout, and we'll just call this init method, which is a constructor of this grid layout. So next thing is to just give the column over here. So let me say column should be 2. You can just change this column to 3 or 4 according to your need, but we'll just stick to 2 because we just want this 2 column over here. And next thing is to just add the widget. So let me say add widget function here, and that should be label. So first of all, give the label and the text. So text here should be name. So it should be name over here. And let me just go down again, because we have just added the widget over here in the first layout, or in the first part of the grid layout. That was basically in the first item or the first field of our grid layout. And next is to just make a username. So let me say self.username, that is our variable which should be inputted from the user. So let me say text input field, which is basically this field, and I'll just say multi-line over here, that is multi-line should be true. That means you have to give the multi-line to be inputted from the user over here. So next thing is to add this username basically to this widget. So in order to add, we have add widget method, and this add widget will take the widget. Basically widget is our username. So we'll just say username, and that should be over this field. So we have just added this to the grid layout. So next thing is we'll just make a new label, and that would be for password. And I'll just say, let me just make a new label over here, and that should be text as password. So let me just go down here and let me just put text, which should be password, and basically this is for this field. And the next is to just get this password first. So I'll just say this password should be given or just taken from this field. So I'll just say it should be text first. So password would be the text, and it should be password. So I'll just say password. So it should be password over here, and this password should be true. So I'll just say it should be true over here. And multi-line, that means the line multi-line attribute would be false. So I'll just say multi-line should be false. So this basically multi-line is to just allow user to write a multi-line that is text. So next thing is just add this password to our grid layout. So in order to add, we have just add widget method, and I'll just say self.password, because this password should be added to this field, which is basically our grid layout. So we have just pretty much defined our init method, that is of our login page. So next thing we have to do is we'll just make another, that is class, which is basically our class, which will just inherit this app class, or what we say app module. So let's make that. So it is really important to make this my demo. Let me say my demo. And why we need this is basically in order to run our app. So it should be run on the top of this app module. So let me just define build method again, which was really an important method in order to render all of this widget to our console or to our app. So we'll just pass build here, and I'll just say return. So in the previous lecture we have just written a label. So we have just written a label, and we have just something did like this, that is text equal hello, or we'll just say I am programmer. So in this case we'll just return, that is this login page from here. That is, I'll just say login page and just return me that, and we'll just call, that is our my app or my demo, from name equal main. So I'll just say name equal main over here, and we'll just call this app now from this name equal main, which is basically our my demo, and just call this run method. So we'll just say run method should be called, which is basically a pinpoint or an entry point of our app. It will just allow my demo, that is this build function, to render all of these components to our console. So in order to run your code, just go to this run tab and just click this run and select login page, because we want to just run the login page, not the demo. So we'll just say login page for now, and it should give you something like this. Let me resize this as for the mobile, and you could see name and password here. So what if I just type here name, that is our name, let me say Kiwi project, and if I just hit enter, it is going in the multi-line. That means it will just go to this next line, because we have just set here that is multi-line should be true in the case of username. And next is we'll just say something that is here. Let's go down here in the password, and if I just say something that is password here, then you could see a strict, as we have just mentioned here that the password should be true. That means all the text will be converted to the asterisk. And if I just hit enter in order to get to the next line, it is not allowed, because we have just said here multi-line should be false. And let me just close this down first, and if I just set this multi-line to be false in case of the user 2, and let's run this code again, then you could see, if I just resize this down again, and if I just hit here name, that is Kiwi project, and if I just hit enter, then you could see it will not allow to enter the multi-line. That means you are not allowed to write the multi-line text in the same field. So it will just go over here, and let me just close this down again, and you could see all of the widgets is rendered. So basically this text was for the field that was rendered over here, which is basically this field is for this widget, and username is for the text input, which is for this field, and basically next to field will be over here, which is basically this grid layout hole will be the grid layout. And you can also change the screen resolution according to your machine, according to your platform, from Android to the Linux to the Mac OS X and any Windows machine. So this will be the wrap for this video, and in this video we saw how login page can be created just by this few line of code, where we just make use of this grid layout, and we just call the init method of the grid layout in order to just wrap us with this all this default value, and basically we just make use of this column and row that are defined in the grid layout in order to just render the grid layout using this build method, and that is rendered nicely in our app, in this app, which is basically the grid layout over here. So in the next lecture we'll just see about the more widget, and we'll just implement the new method of just writing this UI using the Kiwi language. So see you in the next lecture.